Well, I'm here now with the Shadow Chancellor George Osborne. Thank you very much for coming in to join us today. We've been out speaking to people in Oldham, one of the areas where this week it was announced 19 people there are looking for each job vacancy, and they're also particularly struggling. They're wanting British jobs for British workers, they're saying. What would you be doing to try to help the people there who are struggling so much to find work?
Well, I think there are two things. First of all, people who are in work, we've got to try and keep them in work, because obviously once they're unemployed, that is a tragedy not just for them and their family, but also for the wider economy and for all of us as taxpayers. So first of all, do everything you can to support businesses through this period so they don't go bust and they don't have to shed jobs. And I think the key thing, because it is a credit crunch, is trying to get credit to these businesses, which is the lifeblood of a modern economy. And we've been calling as Conservatives for months for a national loan guarantee scheme which would help these businesses, which would crucially help people stay in work. Now, of course, sadly, in Manchester, now over 100,000 people are out of work. The unemployment rate in Manchester is one of the highest in the country now, approaching 10%. So we've got to help people who are unemployed. And here again, there are plenty of things you can do while people are unemployed to get them reskilled. One of the tragedies in Oldham actually is that the further education college is not expanding in the way we were promised it was going to, which seems to me crazy at a time when we need help like further education for people. But we should also be saying to businesses, because ultimately what we want to do is, of course, get someone a job again. If you take on someone who's been unemployed for a period of months, then we will help you. We will cut your tax bill for taking that person on. That helps the business, but crucially it also helps those people in Oldham and the rest of Manchester get back into work.
Now, yesterday we heard David Cameron speaking about the need to deal with public debt. Obviously, at the moment, a lot of people are saying they're very short of money. They'd quite like to see tax cuts. Dealing with public debt very much sounds like it could be tax rises, if that's what the Conservatives are needing to do. Is that the case?
Well, I think there are two things that people need to understand. First of all, we are in a very, very difficult economic situation. The unemployment rise is the largest of any month on record. So when you think of the 1980s and the 1990s, we have not seen in any of those decades the size of the unemployment rise that we saw this week. And the second point is this, that the public finances are in a complete mess. We have the worst public finances in any country in the developed world. And what that means for people watching this is not some abstract problem. These are our debts. These are the debts that have been racked up by Gordon Brown on our behalf. And you've got to acknowledge the problem, because ultimately if you don't deal with your public finances problem, not only will this Labour government be unable to fund things like hospitals and further education colleges, but then taxes will have to go up far more than if you've got a plan to deal with it now. And what David Cameron was saying, and what I of course absolutely agree with him, is we've got to confront the problem, deal with the public debt in the sense of having a plan to bring it under control. That the way you do this is by getting a grip on spending and making sure that, for example, some of those mega salaries we pay for people who are running public quangos are looked at again, but also understand that you cannot balance the budget on the backs of Britain's poorest, that the rich in our society, some of whom after all were in the city and made some of these mistakes, are going to have to pay their fair share as well. So, for example, the new tax rate that is coming in, the 45% tax rate for people earning big incomes of £150,000 a year, the Conservatives can't stop that happening. I'm afraid because of what Gordon Brown has done to the public finances, we can't stop that.
So, for ordinary people watching this, are tax rises for them, in your view, inevitable?
Well, Labour has actually said they are going to tax ordinary people. So they say if they're re-elected, and of course we're now coming up to a general election at some point in the next year, they've said that they will increase national insurance, which is in effect the income tax that we all pay for being in work. They've said that's going to go up for people on pretty average incomes, people earning over £19,000 a year. I'd love to be able to avoid that. I'm going to work very hard to try and avoid those tax rises on middle-income people in cities like Manchester. Taxes on jobs at a time like this, taxes on the incomes of people on modest incomes, is something we really need to try and avoid. I can't, with all honesty, I don't think, avoid the big tax rises, the 45% tax rise on people earning over £150,000, those very richest in our society, I think, will be paying more.
OK, George Osborne, thank you very much for joining us today.